Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating and honestly a deeply important concept that sits right at the very foundation of how we understand information in our modern digital age. We're going to be exploring a core philosophical and technical theme, contextual intelligence. Specifically, we'll be looking at the journey of transforming raw data into meaningful signals. I mean, think about it. We have all this access, right? All this transparency. But what does it actually mean? Are we really more informed, or are we just way more overwhelmed? Well, we're going to break down the exact mechanics of how to bridge that gap. Okay, let's dive into this. So, data without context is just noise. I really want you to let that sink in for a second, because it's a stark, absolute truth about the systems we rely on today. Having access to absolute mountains of raw information, endless streams of code, massive digital ledgers, it all means absolutely nothing if you don't know what it actually means, right? It's just static. It's this loud, buzzing noise that completely overwhelms our ability to make any real decisions. Without context, we aren't empowered by data. We're literally just deafened by it. Imagine logging into your bank app, right? And you just see a list of withdrawal amounts and dates, but absolutely zero merchant names. You have the raw data, perfect numeric accuracy. But without the context of who you actually paid, the information is effectively useless. And honestly, that is the reality of so much digital transparency today. And that brings us to a pretty profound truth. You can stare at perfect records and still understand absolutely nothing. Think about the grand illusion of modern transparency for a minute. We're constantly told that because a system, like a blockchain ledger, for example, has a flawless, immutable, mathematically perfect record of events, that we've somehow achieved total transparency. But look, a blockchain is simply a secure digital record book. A perfect record is just a perfect recording of an event. Human comprehension is something entirely different. It's literally like staring at the falling green ones and zeros in the matrix without knowing how to read the code. You can look at a perfectly accurate string of numbers all day long, but if you don't know what those numbers represent out there in the real world, you are completely in the dark. Perfect recording just does not automatically equal human understanding. Section 1. Exposing data without explaining. Now, what's really interesting here is the clear contrast between what we currently have and what we actually need. Most systems just stop at merely exposing information. They proudly dump raw data onto your lap, give you full access to the ledger, and go, there you go, total transparency. But as we just established, that's just noise. The real value, the true power of information, lies in explaining that information. This is the missing layer in our current digital infrastructure. It's the critical difference between someone handing you a massive 1,000-page dictionary in a language you literally don't speak and actually taking the time to translate the words for you. Providing the dictionary merely exposes the information, but translating the words explains it. We absolutely have to move from merely exposing the raw inputs to actually explaining what we're looking at. Moving right along to Section 2, the Codatta solution and building that missing layer. To really understand the solution, we need to clearly define the core concept of our explainer today. Contextual intelligence is the process of transforming raw data into meaningful signals. That is the vital bridge. We take that unreadable, perfectly recorded raw information and we apply intelligence to it so that it becomes a signal. And a signal is something that a human being or a business can actually read, understand, and use to make an actionable decision. It is the literal cure for all that noise we talked about earlier. It's the bridge between raw, unreadable code and true, actionable understanding. Let's see how this actually builds out in practice. We can break down the exact mechanism at Codatta.io into 3 distinct logical steps. Step 1, we start with on-chain activity. These are the raw, unedited transactions on the blockchain, those perfect records that entirely on their own are just static noise. Step 2, and honestly, this is where the magic happens, is where the missing layer is applied. We attach verifiable metadata. Think of metadata as a verified label or like a highly trusted tag that provides real-world context. We're taking pieces of verified, trusted information and connecting them directly to the raw code. And because of that absolutely crucial second step, we arrive at Step 3. Meaningful signals are generated. By attaching these verified labels to raw code, we've successfully taken the noise, added undeniable context, and produced a crystal clear, understandable signal. Section 3. Usable transparency and its real-world impact. This brilliantly illustrates the real-world impact by tracking the evolution of a single on-chain address. Without contextual intelligence, an address starts at point 1. It's literally just random code. It's this anonymous, kind of intimidating string of characters just floating out there in a digital ledger. But as we apply that verifiable metadata we just talked about, it evolves. First, it becomes identifiable. We suddenly know, okay, this address belongs to a specific legitimate cryptocurrency exchange. Then it becomes explainable. We can actually see its history of safe, regular transactions over the past 5 years. And finally, because of all this structured context, it becomes trustworthy. It's evolved from a meaningless, risky piece of noise into a trusted signal that you can confidently interact with, a real game changer. Which leads us to this highly provocative question. I really want you to ask yourself this as you look at the systems you interact with every single day. What good is transparency if you literally can't use it? If the open data you're provided is so raw, so completely devoid of context that it tells you absolutely nothing, well, then that transparency is entirely theoretical. It doesn't actually help you. The severe limitation of raw data is that it just creates the illusion of openness without providing you any actual empowerment. So the crucial point is this. True transparency isn't just about having access to data. It is entirely about having access to context. By solving that missing layer, by attaching verifiable metadata to raw, perfect records to create meaningful signals, transparency finally becomes usable. It stops being this overwhelming wall of code and starts being a tool for actual, trustworthy understanding. And that fundamentally changes how we should look at data going forward. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer today. I want to leave you with this one final thought. The next time you're handed a mountain of raw data in literally any system, you have to ask yourself, are you actually being empowered or are you just being handed more noise?